he says, find a way to win,
Mm-hmm.
and so that's the best piece of advice I can give is always find a way to win. There's going to be setbacks. There's going to be delays, the unexpecteds, the knockdown moments, but find a way to win, find a way to get back up, find an opportunity, a different route to get to where you want to get to, to accomplish what you want in life.
Welcome back to the Positive Gains podcast. Today, my special guest, this man right here has a lot of different titles, so I'm going to try to get through them. Three-time All-American, ASU 2011 National Champion, 125-pound division, author, motivational speaker, commentator, former Guinness World Record holder, coach, actor, Nike athlete, father, among many things. Anthony Robles.
How you doing, my friend?
Doing very well, man. Thank you for being on today. It's a real treat and an honor. So I appreciate you, man.
My pleasure, man. Excited to talk with you today.
So the first thing I have is early life, man. So for those that don't know, Anthony was born without a right leg, and you have a pretty unique story. I believe you grew up in Mesa, right?
I did, yes, sir. Mesa, Arizona.
Mesa. So what was early life like for you, and when did you decide to start wrestling?
So yeah, I started wrestling when I was 14 years old, but early life for me, before that, I grew up loving all types of sports. I wanted to be a football player. I played tackle football from 6th grade up till 9th grade. I was pretty much like any other kid because my mom raised me that way. I had 3 brothers and 1 sister, and nobody in my family treated me any differently. They said, oh, I'm missing a leg, it's not a big deal. So luckily, because of that, I kind of grew up with that same mentality, to where I didn't see my missing a leg as a big deal. I didn't see it as something that was going to hold me back. And my mom encouraged me to go out there and really step outside of my comfort zone and see what I was capable of. So sports for me was a huge outlet, to be able to go out there and compete. And but once I turned 14, it was a cousin of mine who introduced me to wrestling. I remember he took me to wrestling practice, and he lived out in Tucson. He went to South Point High School. I just remember just getting thrown around the room, man. But I fell in love with the sport from that point on, and that's all I wanted to do because I loved that wrestling. Everyone was unique. There were short wrestlers, there was tall wrestlers, there was stocky. You just used your own natural abilities and your own physical stature and figure it out, figure out what you could do. And so I looked at wrestling as my outlet to show people it doesn't matter what I don't have. What matters is what I have. And I'm going to show it on this wrestling mat.
It's funny how sports kind of like brings people together and can bridge a gap and take maybe somebody who's not sure, and then look what happens, if they're willing to put in the work. Mm-hmm. And so the high school career, I was reading a while back that you were, what was it? 5-8 as a freshman, and something like one of the worst kids in the city. I mean, that's just what I read. I don't want to misquote you. And then, turning it around, but like that first year, what was going on?
No, you're very accurate, man. I was the worst wrestler in my weight class. That's for so, for me, I remember losing, at the Mesa City tournament. I finished last place, and it was very discouraging, that losing record, and finishing that situation. But I just remember that off season, that summertime, I just mentally made a decision and a commitment that I wasn't going to stop until I was the best wrestler to ever come out of Arizona. This was a tough sport. This was an individual sport. There are a lot of people that didn't think I could do it, which is the reason why I really wanted to do it even more. I really wanted to prove people wrong. So that summer for me, the turning point was just making a decision mentally to where I bought in, said, I'm going to do whatever it takes. And then basically just having the courage to step into the high school wrestling room that summer, train with the varsity guys, and kind of get my butt kicked. I was getting beat up, but I was learning, through that whole process. And I tell people that now. It's like, that was the best thing that could have happened to me, was just getting challenged like that in that room. You have an opportunity to learn more from your challenges, than the wins, than the easy road. The challenges, they force you to reevaluate, to change things up if you're willing to. And if you are willing to, then you can grow from it. You can evolve. And so that was the biggest difference for me, going from freshman year, finishing last place in the city tournament. Sophomore year, I would finish 6th in the state. And that was that summertime, just putting in the time, getting beat, but learning through those challenges along the way.
And I always tell people, like, I never wrestled. My hat's off to anybody that's done it. Because I remember walking through high school, and in Safford at that time, they were just they had already won. So they won every year that I was in high school. And I remember walking by the wrestling room, and I see guys walking out, my friends, with trash bags and opening that wrestling room door, and it's so hot in there. And I'm like, why would you do that? And then they're running outside, with these bags on, and the constant training, and the spitting in the bottles. I didn't understand it. I'm like, you guys are crazy, man. But I grew to really appreciate it, because at the end of the day, they always told me, well, there's no blame. They're like, it's not like basketball where somebody drops a pass, or football, or a missed shot. Like, it's you and that other person. They're like, and if you can kind of hone in on that, it's just you and that other person on the mat. So yeah, what a crazy sport, man.
Yeah, man, that's what I loved about it. The toughness part of it, that one-on-one aspect. I felt like it was just a lot of accountability for me. I was like, okay, what I put into it is what I'm going to get out of it. And I have no one to blame at the end of the day but myself. So, and also just I knew that I was willing to do anything I needed to do. I was willing to outwork anybody, to reach that goal. And it's just that mental part of it. You got to be willing to push further than you think you're capable of. And it might start in small increments, but the more you do it, those increments grow. You get bigger, you get stronger, mentally tougher. And so for me, just getting into a tough sport like wrestling, it made me tougher. It made me more accountable. It made me more disciplined and more confident overall. So, toughest sports, it makes the toughest people.
And what was that like, as far as when you're starting to really turn it on, and junior or senior year, I think you go a combined 96-0, and those are the 2 individual championships, right? So
Yep.
now, like, you've completely just changed things around. You're winning. Like, what was a chatter like at high school? I mean, from going to like a rough freshman year to now, you're the top dog.
Yeah, it was interesting, because I remember when I started, I had a lot of people cheering for me and, like, clapping, and, I had all the support, but I really started to notice it after I won my first state title. I went 48-0 that year, and I was pretty dominant. I remember winning it, and then seeing on like some online wrestling forum that people were now starting to ask if I had an advantage. And it was kind of strange. Like, I was reading, I was like, what are they talking about? Like, oh, he's missing a leg, so it's one less thing to grab, and his upper body is stronger for the weight class because he doesn't have the weight from the leg. And I was like, man, where did that come from? Like, I started as a 90-pound freshman wrestling the 103-pound weight class, finished last in the city, and all of a sudden, within 2 years, it's like, it's not fair and it's an advantage. And it was weird, and so I kind of felt like there was some sort of target on my back, like people were saying it's not fair for other people now. And but really for me, I kind of saw that, and it made me happy, if that makes sense, because I never wanted to be the kid that people felt sorry for. Like, oh, he's missing his leg. I never wanted to be like, that, and so now I felt like I was getting so good, to where people were trying to tear me down because I was getting so good, so in a way, I was frustrated, because like I felt like they're taking the hard work away from me. But at the same time, I was like, well, you know what? They're not feeling sorry for me anymore. Now they're seeing me as just being too dominant in this sport. That's one of the toughest things out there. And so I was okay with that, and it was pretty cool because at that point, I mentioned that target. People started to come at me with different tactics on the wrestling mat. Trying to find ways to beat me, and I felt very honored for that. I felt like now it was no longer me chasing people. It was now I'm the one getting chased. I'm the one that they're trying to hunt down. So it was an extra motivator for me. Like I was making room now. I was making noise, and they were trying to take me down a notch, but I was going to keep moving.
So the target was on your back. I mean, painted just huge, and you were going to get everybody's best shot no matter what, because it sounds like people were trying to be that person to say, hey, I took him down. I defeated him.
Yeah. And coaches were talking, and my coaches heard things, and so they're sharing strategies and things, and I loved it, because I felt like in some ways they're trying to tear me down, but at the same time, I felt like it was kind of respect too. It's like, now they're seeing me as someone that they need to take seriously. When I first started, it's like, is this kid made of glass? Are we going to hurt him? Can he stick with this? That they felt sorry for me. Now it's like, we got to beat him. What's working on him? What can we use? They're strategizing. So I felt, I felt at home. I felt like, okay, it's, I'm earning respect now as I'm going.
And college recruitment. I know that we'll get into the movie here in a minute, but I believe that the big schools that you wanted to go to didn't show interest in you. I'm trying to remember the name of the school that offered you a full ride, and then you decided to stay home at ASU.
Drexel, yeah.
So, okay, and one thing I thought that was like mind blowing, because a lot of people would say, hey, if I get something, I'm gonna take it. I'm gonna take whatever I get, and I'm gonna run with it. And you decided to say, no, I want something else. And walking on to any sport is a feat in itself. And for you to be able to do that at ASU is just fantastic, man. So the recruitment, what was the recruitment process like for you, for those that aren't aware?
Yeah, so coming out of high school, I wasn't heavily recruited to wrestling college. At the D1 level, I did only receive one wrestling scholarship, and it was a great offer. It was from Drexel University. It was a full-ride wrestling scholarship, and I got to give a huge shout out to the coach over there. May he rest in peace. It was Coach Jack Childs. He believed in me. He gave me a chance, and I loved him. He was a great guy. Everything, it sounded great. The team, everything. But really, for me, I remember going through the whole process of not having offers and not having opportunities other than this amazing one. What kept me home, the biggest reason I stayed home, was my family. As the film kind of depicts, there were some challenges at home. My stepfather wasn't the greatest role model. He wasn't the greatest husband, greatest father figure. And, when it came time to me finally having to make the decision on, am I going to take this offer, this one great offer, this golden ticket, or am I going to stay home and risk it, to walk onto a program at Arizona State? I decided to stick home for my family. I felt like they needed me. I couldn't be away, but also I learned along the way that I needed them too. I needed to lean on their strength and their support. And so I walked on to Arizona State. I had a partial academic scholarship there for my first 2 years. And then, down the road, things started to come together. But yeah, people saw it as a big risk. My family did. They didn't understand it. And to be honest with you, there are parts of me that I didn't understand the decision I was making either. It's like this doesn't make sense. Am I stupid right now for turning it down? But you got to go with your gut. And for me, there was just something inside me just saying I needed to stay home. This is where I'm meant to be at. This is my place. And it ended up bigger picture, and ended up working out for me.
And you said, challenges, and you're talking a little bit about them. Aside from just getting on campus and it being, a completely new atmosphere, you've got the family aspect going on. You also have, at one point, the program got cut, right? I don't know, it was the beginning or the end of your freshman year.
End of my freshman year. Yeah.
So you got that going for you. The workouts, so those challenges, how did you get through everything? Because a lot of people would have just said, you know what, I'm done. I've tried a little bit. It's not for me. Maybe I need to drop down. Maybe wrestling's just not for me because I can't do it. So how did you continue to persevere through all that you've been through?
It was a mixture of things at certain times. One of them, when I was going through certain challenges, I'm a big visual guy. I like to write things down. So I'm going through struggles. I write down my opportunities, my strengths, and my blessings at that moment in my life. To kind of remind me that, I'm in a rough patch. This is kind of a tough situation, but remind me what's going well still. What I have, just like in a wrestling match. There's going to be so many things out of your control, so many things that are going to happen to you, or they're going to happen during the match. If you allow your mind to just dwell on that, and rather than focus on what you can control, you're going to lose the match. You're setting yourself up for defeat. Same way in life. There's going to be external factors that they're going to be there no matter what you do. They're going to be there no matter, whatever. So you just got to focus on what you can control and move forward with that. So for me, writing down my opportunities, it helped me to overcome my challenges. Like, this is why I can still go overcome. This is why I can still do it. This is why I can still accomplish. And then also having people in my life that I could lean on for support at certain times. My family was a huge support for me. My mom, my siblings, also certain teammates, that I would rely on. And as the film shows, there was a moment in my life, in my career in college, where I really hit a wall, and is a group of third graders that brought me back, with their letters, that wrote me as their hero of the week, that inspired me to come back. So leaning on people, when I'm struggling, was another big thing to help me overcome challenges. And then also just tracking my progress, especially when you're going after big goals, that are difficult to accomplish, that might take a while. Right. It's like, we want to get to the end, right? We want to get 100 steps from where we are. A lot of times it's going to take a lot longer than we think. There's going to be delays. So make sure that, along the way, track the little things that you're doing, the little moves that you're making, the progress that you're making along the way, so that you can, at times take a deep breath, zoom out and say, okay, I'm not there yet, but you know what? I'm here. I'm closer than I was a week ago, 2 weeks ago. And so celebrating that little progress along the way, knowing that you're getting closer, that's something that helped me to overcome my challenges as well. Just knowing, okay, I'm not there yet, but I'm getting there. Little by little, I'm climbing this mountain.
And that last season for you, going perfect, 36-0 and winning the big one, like, what did that mean for you, your family? I know you shared, a lot of great moments with your mom, like probably your number one supporter. So finally, when it was over, I mean, what were the thoughts that, were reeling in your head?
Man, that was special. I remember, with the 10 seconds left in the match, I'm hearing the ref counting down, the crowd getting loud. And, when they got down to 0, like, my whole body just, face first, I dropped down to the mat. I took a deep breath in, and it's like I made it, and all the hard work and everything I put into it for that moment right there, it was worth it. But to be able to celebrate with my family, at that moment when I won, it felt like I was living a dream that I never woke up from, because like standing ovation with 20,000 people, and I'm celebrating. I'm doing all these. That night, I'm asked to do interviews with ESPN and all this stuff. But that night, to celebrate with my family, we were at dinner. It was probably maybe like 9:30, 10 o'clock at night. We're at a dinner, at the restaurant, just celebrating, just my family. The phone was blowing up, social media was going crazy, but all that mattered at that moment was just those people at that table. We had no idea what was going to happen tomorrow, what was going to happen down the road with the movie and everything else. But at that moment, it was just celebrating with the people that I love most in the world, just with my family, and, getting there with their support. And that was what it's all about. And, really, you can't ever control the outcome. All you can do is just give your very best, but at that moment, to have the outcome that I had hoped for, become a reality, it was just a blessing. And to celebrate with the people who never doubted me, who are always in my corner, that was just something that I'll forever be grateful for, and forever remember that moment, just being with my family.
And the movie, I feel like I think I watched it either the opening weekend or maybe the week after. And I knew they were making one, but I didn't realize the cast. I mean, Don Cheadle was, I believe, the ASU coach. Michael Pena, I believe, a high school coach. Mm-hmm. J-Lo plays your mom. Like, that's just a lot right there to take in as far as Hollywood, man. So, and then you were the a double for Jarrell Jerome. That was the other person I didn't know name. So yeah, man, the movie was great, very inspiring. I'm sure you're very proud of it. If you want to just talk about how it all kind of came together, and the film process shooting.
Yeah, it was so surreal getting to work on a movie about my life. And I remember one of the phone calls we got the night that I won my championship. It was from a production company, saying, "Hey, we'd love for you to come out to Hollywood with your family, and we want to talk to you about doing a movie about your life." And to get that call was exciting. I was like, "Wow, this is amazing." But then at the same time, it was very scary, because when you think about it, it's like, man, I'm about to share with the world not just my triumphs, not just the great moments, but also the painful stuff. Also the scars, those things in my, that I don't want to talk about, that I'm uncomfortable talking about. So we knew early, it's like, we need to take our time with this, and I was blessed to come on with my manager, who's still my manager today. And he said the same thing. You got to take your time with this. He said, make sure it's the right group of people, make sure you can trust them, and make sure that this is going to be something that you're going to be proud of at the end of the day, because this is your life. This is going to be around the rest of your life and your family's life. So we did take our time. And luckily the perfect team came in, a great team. And that was Artist Equity and Amazon. I remember the first meeting I had with Ben Affleck, when Artist Equity signed on board, he's like, we're going to make you proud. He's like, if there's anything, that makes you uncomfortable, that you don't like, you let me know, you let us know, and we'll change it. And everyone we worked with was the same. Amazon said the same thing to us. Like, we want to make your family proud of this. And so that was special, to have them say that, but also to back that up, because they were true to their word. Certain things, if we didn't like, we don't really want to talk about this, or we don't really like, no problem. They were respectful. I remember meeting Jarrell Jerome for the first time. And it was in a hotel weight room, because that was my comfort area. I was just lifting, working out. So I suggested the spot, and for 2 hours, it's just he and I in this weight room, and we're just lifting and talking, just getting to know each other. And, I had known Jarrell from his previous work, some amazing things he had done.
Yeah.
But what really touched me and what really had me open up to him, it was just, he wasn't grilling me, to like, tell me about the painful moments. It was just get to know each other. It's like, he'd open up about himself, about his past, about his mom and their relationship. And, so we just developed this natural bond. And it seemed like that was the same sort of situation with my mom and J-Lo. They spent like a 2-hour Zoom call together the first time, just talking. When we were on set, Jennifer and my mom, they're just talking on the side. Jennifer's asking my mom for input for the little details. Asking my mom is like, is this good? He's like, is this how you'd say it? Is this what you do? And so for everyone with so much star, and clout behind their names to just care so much about us and, portraying us in the right way, that meant a lot, and so to be on set with these people, it was it was an enjoyable experience, because it's like, wow, there's 200 people putting a movie together about our life, and they cared so much. The energy was just amazing. And it was a lot of fun to be a part of it. And I got to give a shout out to our director, Billy Goldenberg, because he wanted my family to be around. He wanted my family to be a part of it. So if people watch the film, my siblings, my brothers, my sister, they all have cameos in the movie. My mom has a cameo in the film. My wife, and that was just back to Amazon, Artist Equity, Billy just wanting us to be a part of this process. And it's special now, because I can look back, I can see the film, and this is our family legacy, and it's something that we're proud of. And we can also say that we had a hand in it, that we were involved in it. And, along the way, any fears that we had, any worries that we had, they disappeared. We just felt just so much at ease, and we just felt like we could trust this group to tell our story. And they did a phenomenal job with it.
They did. Yeah, I really enjoyed it. And that was another thing, the family support, like you just said, having everybody on set and being a part of it. And that's one thing I took from the movie. No matter what happened, you guys always were tight knit, and your mom did such a good job. Like kind of the definition of I don't want to say a ride or die, but I mean, man, she was just by your side through thick and thin, and no matter what, she was going to figure it out, for you and your siblings. So shout out to your mom and the rest of the family, man, because a lot of families are broken, man, and you guys had a lot of bad stuff, but you still stayed together.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm blessed with a great family, man. And that was one thing I mentioned earlier, the father figure situation, it wasn't the best. It wasn't someone that I could look up to, but I could look up to my mom as my hero. I could lean on my siblings for support. And that's where my strength always came from. My mom always made it a point to where if I was wrestling, the family was there to support, and they were a part of it. If my siblings were doing something, boom, we're there. We're a part of it. We had each other's backs, and even with this whole filming process, that was another scare. It was like, we don't want this to tear our family apart, so either everyone's comfortable with this or nobody is, and we're not going to do it. So a lot of moments at the dinner table to where we're just talking, we're going through the script, we're going through the revisions as a family, deciding, are we comfortable with this? And, it was pretty special to look back on this journey as a family and, think that, and see that we made it together, that we went through the struggles and we came out the other side stronger and as a unit. And that's one thing in life. It's like, you're not always going to have the, the support that you want from certain people that you hope to get it from. But you got to learn to let that go. You got to learn to lean on the people that are there, that are supporting you, that are loving you. That's your family.
Absolutely.
For me, my high school coach, Bobby Williams, my college coaches, they were my family. They're like father figures to me. I keep in touch with them. They're men that I look up to, and get advice from still now. I'm actually having lunch with my college coach on Friday, just to catch up on life. So for people out there, I know you want the family support. I know there's, you want certain people to back you up, and sometimes it's not going to be there, but don't overlook the people that are there for you, because that's your family. That's your voices in the crowd, and they can help you get through those tough times as you're wrestling through your life. So lean on them, be blessed with what you have.
Absolutely, man. Couple more things for you and we'll get out of here. Well, I'm just curious, man, what's on your playlist?
Man, I'm a big oldies man. I love Earth, Wind and Fire, Al Green, Bretton Woods, but also mixing the new stuff. I love J. Cole is my favorite. I love J. Cole, some Nas. My all-time favorite song, though, it's Simple Man by Leonard Skinner. I love that song just because of the words. It's a mom talking to her son about believing and about achieving. So, I got a good mix on there.
That's a good mix. And free time, I know there's only one thing that I gotta hold against you, Anthony, and I'm sorry to bring this up, bro, but I saw that you were a Raiders fan, man, and
Yes,
I'm a Chargers fan, so
ooh, man.
Oh, I know it.
Sorry to hear that, man.
Oh, not playing, but yeah. What else do you do in your free time? I know you watch the Raiders. What else?
Yeah, I'm a homebody, so I love being home, hanging out with my family, my son. Barbecue. And one of my big hobbies, I love working on cars. That's something for me. It's just it's a passion. It's something that I can kind of unplug my brain, just from life. I'm blessed. I got my dream car 2 summers ago now. I bought a 67 Lincoln Continental convertible. And so that's my project now. I'm working on it. I finally got it up and running, so I can drive it down the street, and that's my thing, man. Just working on cars and, really just wrestling is a hobby for me. Wrestling is something I love, just being around, just to be around it, because it's taught me so much, and I want to teach this next generation. So that's a hobby of mine, just being a wrestling coach, just being a club coach, just giving back,
And advice, what would you offer to somebody that might ask you, Anthony, I've seen the movie, but what else? What else can I do? I want to try to play or wrestle in college or whatever, because I feel like, your story goes beyond the wrestling mat. It's life now. You know what I mean? It doesn't, it's not just sports. Like, I feel like people can look at your stuff and do whatever, because it really is inspiring. So what would you say to somebody that might want to do something monumental?
And I would say come up with a plan, come up with a strategy. It's great to have the goal, but, come up with that strategy. This is how I'm going to reach my goal. This is how I'm going to accomplish, what I'm trying to go after in life. Have that plan, and also just be willing to understand that sometimes you have to change your plan up. Sometimes it's going to take some swerve. Sometimes it's going to take some, some creativity. But, there's a phrase in the movie, Coach Charles says it in there. Don Cheadle, he says, find a way to win.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's the best piece of advice I can give is always find a way to win. There's going to be setbacks. There's going to be delays, the unexpecteds, the knockdown moments, but find a way to win, find a way to get back up, find an opportunity, a different route to get to where you want to get to, to accomplish what you want in life. Because, the best things, the most special things that you're trying to achieve, they're the most difficult to reach. They're the most difficult things to accomplish, but that's what makes them so special. So just be one and just understand that along the way, yeah, you're going to get some bumps, but that word unstoppable, it doesn't mean you don't face the bumps. It doesn't mean you don't face the challenges. It means you just find that way to win, right? You keep wrestling through it and you end up on the other side, you'll get your arm raised.
That's great advice, man. So many nuggets right there for people to take and learn from. And, Anthony, I appreciate you being on today, taking time out of your busy day. It's been a treat, man, a real privilege and an honor to, actually meet you and speak with you. Thank you so much for coming on this podcast, man.
My pleasure, man. Thank you for your time and for the opportunity to share.
Yeah. Best of luck to you.